Welcome to the Sundays with Wendy podcast, Katy Terveer.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Thanks for popping on. I'm just going to read a bio here. Katy is a leader, researcher, and innovator whose mission is to create better pathways for health, social connections, and purpose across our lives. She recently graduated from Old Dominion University with her master's in public health and is navigating a career transition into community health and program development. And so, in this transition of your career, you and I connected during the Benjamin Goldberg Foundation social prescribing initiatives, and we've had so much to talk about. And so, when I was thinking about future guests, I thought the conversation with you would be really meaningful.
Yeah. I think social prescribing is a term that we're trying to get out there a lot more. And it's something that I kind of discovered through my work with AgeWave. And I'm looking into diving more into that with you.
You have quite a journey. Can you share a little bit with us?
Yeah, sure. And you know a little bit about how this all started. And I think when I was in college, which was very, that's kind of when everyone's trying to figure out what they want to do and who they want to be. But I had this, really significant and traumatic but transformative experience where my mom passed away of breast cancer, and I had the opportunity to be her caregiver for a very short period of time. My mom was actually a doctor herself. She created the first inpatient rehab unit at Virginia Beach General, and
Wow.
she really went down on her own terms. She really took charge of her healthcare, which was, I think, a relief for all of us. But I had the chance to be with her. I had the chance to just take in what she was doing and how she was handling it. And she was handling it not just from like a very medically informed way, but also like how am I taking care of my body? How am I taking care of my spirit? And she really kind of set me on this journey of like finding out who I am and what I want to do and what's my purpose with this. And so when she passed away at the time, I was getting my undergraduate degree in marketing. And she had given me this one book because I was just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And it was called There's No Such Thing as Business Ethics. And basically, it was just saying there's just ethics, right? Like, no matter where you are,
Mhm.
you need to figure out how are you being the kind of person that you want to be, whether that's in a business role or a nonprofit or, wherever you are. So that was one of the things that I was always trying to figure out with my marketing degree is how am I going to use this for good? How am I going to use this to kind of create the change that I want to see in the world? And so I got really interested in social entrepreneurship, and I kind of always knew that I wanted to come back to my community at some point and use all these skills that I've learned to help here. But I also felt like I needed to learn more. So then I got into market research. I was doing market research for a company called Nielsen. They're really big into like TV ratings and things like that. And I sat on site for a while at Johnson and Johnson as an analyst. And I started to feeling like, my role didn't feel purposeful enough. So
Mhm.
then I started looking for, okay, what's next? And that's when I came across AgeWave. And they were a small company that was working with like really large companies. At the time, they had a big project with Bank of America. And so they hired me, and I was doing life stage research. And I was looking at all these different stages of life and, how can the bank basically better serve people who are caregivers or better serve somebody who has been widowed and all of that. And so that's kind of like the journey to AgeWave and how I just got embedded in like very interesting conversations and research about like what is life all about? What is the arc of a life? And it was very kind of humbling just to see how many chapters of lives that we have as a 20-something-year-old at the time.
I know, gosh, you have such a wealth of experience, and some of your research through Wave was featured in the Harvard Business Review.
Yeah, so we wrote Redesigning Retirement, which sparked a lot of conversation on LinkedIn, which was really fun to see. But basically, when we've done so many surveys, and if you ask people over the age of 50, what they want in retirement, over half would like to work in some way. Now, that's not like I want to work full time. I want to be 40 hours a week. I want to have a boss, but I might want to freelance. I might want to, do my own thing. I might want to just like work part time. But honestly, we don't really have a lot of those good options right now. And so the article was really oriented to senior leaders in these large organizations. How can you think more creatively about using this talent? Because think about somebody who's in their early 60s and they don't want to work 40 hours a week, but they might have all this knowledge, all these skill sets, and we could be using that way better than just saying, okay, see you later, and just letting them retire and go off and do nothing.
I saw it so much. I had clients and I would see them retire in that transition between them working and retirement. And it was very interesting. I mean, some were, Wendy, this is so wonderful. I don't know how I had time to work, but
Mm-hmm.
those are the ones that got involved in meaningful projects. And then there were other people who it seemed like had a steadfast career and then all of a sudden got very ill and passed away very quickly after their retirement, which I thought was very interesting and how
Yeah.
important it is for us to stay connected and to give back, even if it's not in the same role we had.
Yeah,
That
I think it's so important because, there's the one side, if somebody is having a lot of health challenges and they're being forced to work, work can be taxing on you. But if you can do work on your terms, then it can also be really kind of like health giving for you. And, I just think you're right. I have an example of somebody in my family who was the CEO of a large nonprofit. And when he retired, he just, a part of him kind of went with it and he didn't replace it, because we always need to have an identity. And if you're not replacing that with a new identity, then it's a huge loss.
yeah, and it's almost like you have to grieve it in a way too. And
Mhm.
I didn't I went through a semi-retirement very early on and, at 49 because of a health issue. I still kept the business open and I'm so glad I did because I kind of took some time for myself in that healing process, but then I knew I had the skill set to do consulting and advisory work and still have my hand in the tax world as well. And so, yeah, I kind of just put it on the back burner and now it's breathing a new, more creative way of working for me, which I love.
I think you're very lucky that you're able to do that. I think we need to think more creatively about creating opportunities so that people can kind of continue to work, but in more flexible ways that aren't so draining on their health.
It's such an important conversation. But along this finance line, where we're talking about that a minute, I was kind of fascinated when I read too that you led a thought leadership study for Edward Jones named the 4 pillars of new retirement. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So we started that actually, it was before the pandemic. We started that work in 2019. And basically, we were tasked with helping them. Edward Jones is a financial firm. So they wanted to know how can we help our clients plan for retirement, not just like the finances, but like the whole picture. And so we ended up creating this framework called the 4 pillars. So it's thinking about your health, which is really important, your physical and mental health, thinking about your family and your social connections in retirement. And we know that those are really intertwined with your health too. Thinking about your purpose, which we've talked about how important having a purpose is. And that actually having a purpose helps you to live longer as well. And then thinking about your finances and how your finances are going to support all of those. So we did this like massive, research with focus groups and surveys. And actually we kept doing that work over and over and with them and going like a little bit deeper with each study. And recently I've seen that they actually even just expanded it. So it's not really about retirement, it's really about life planning. So they're talking to everyone about these 4 pillars, which I thought was really smart and really cool.
Is it so? Because at least when I was coming up, I mean, you graduated and you went into your career, but it was very narrowly focused. And I always say, like, I had no idea when I was entering the accounting world that the breadth of the work would really be in the relationships with people or my
Mhm.
success or what I saw the success of my clients. And I think to open up these conversations early on, just to, it just can look so different.
Yeah, I think it's really good, to be able to kind of play out scenarios. And I mean, I think you probably learn this once you become a financial advisor or CPA, but how much family is interconnected with your finances,
Mhm.
right? Like you think that you have one client, but in reality, you're like one client is supporting all of these people. And so knowing what the family dynamics are you supporting an adult child? Do you have an aging parent? Like all of those things, can hugely impact your finances. So financial advisors need to be asking about that.
Yeah, and it becomes very important, or where I see the dynamics a lot is in estate planning when people need to be thinking about what that looks like or after death work. That can be really taxing and challenging for families.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other kind of interesting insights was that a lot of times, if you have like a client, if you have a couple, and say the advisor has mostly been working with the husband, and husband tends to pass away first, and then you have this wife who's never been part of the financial conversations, and if she doesn't trust that advisor,
Mhm.
she's going to go somewhere else. She's going to
Mhm.
go to somebody who's her friend or her son or daughter. You're going to lose that relationship. So we really talked about the importance of like making sure those conversations are not just with one, but with the couple, and making sure that when that widow is all of a sudden in charge of the finances, that it's not as much of a shock for them.
Yeah. Yeah, you've gotta have a really good temperament, I think, as an advisor too, to be able to land those conversations and be gentle, especially after death, that first year of processing paperwork it's traumatic.
It is. Yeah. I mean, what we ask people, grieving people, to deal with
Mhm.
is awful.
It is, and
Yeah.
I always find I kind of shift into a very soft version of myself in those situations because I've been on the other side of that as well. Yeah, it's really super important. You've done this research and you see these needs and these gaps, if you will. How do you see yourself moving forward?
Think that when I think about all of the research that I've done, and I've done a lot, the thing that really inspires me the most and where I see the biggest opportunity is really thinking about this purpose pillar and thinking about how can we make sure that no matter what age you are, you realize that you have gifts, you have experiences, you can learn from those, and you have something to give. And I, one of the things that was really inspirational for me was when I interviewed a woman named Dr. Linda Freed, and she is the dean of the Mailman School of Public Health at New York University, I believe. She started out as a doctor, and what she would constantly see with some of her older patients was that what they really needed, why they were there, why they were kind of having a lot of their issues, and she couldn't really solve. Like she couldn't give them a medication for to go do something that was a sense of purpose, or to go do something that would provide joy in their life, or to connect with somebody. And so that's really kind of how I came across this like role of social prescribing. But I think that so much of health, we think of it as a very physical health, nutrition and exercise, and I think those things are really important. But a lot of my research in public health is really showing us like the importance of social health, being connected and having a sense of purpose, feeling like you matter, feeling like you're able to give back in a way. Those in some ways I think are even more important because it's part of our like basic humanity of like what really matters in life. And when we don't have those, our health starts to crumble. So I think, I would love to just create programs that are stimulating that for people. And I think you can do that with, there's a lot of different groups. Older adults is one of them. I think a lot of young people are really struggling too to find their place in the world. And I think we put so much focus on like your purpose is the middle of your life, is your career. But what about like, telling kids, hey, you have purpose right now. It's not just about what you're going to do when you grow up, but you can help your community right now
Mhm.
with whatever your skills or talents are. And same with the older adult too. So, I mean, I would love to bring those two together and to do some work. So that's one of the things that we're kind of playing around with right now.
Yes, that's one of the things we're trying to see if there's ways in the community to combine those two because I just think it's a beautiful example. And what better way to pass along knowledge?
And I think too, I mean, there's a lot going on with young people today. Like there's increasing rates of anxiety and depression and disconnection. I think,
Mhm.
I'm seeing a lot of young people today, they're struggling with social skills, like,
Mhm.
just talking, having a conversation with somebody. So I think the more that we can get them in front of people, especially people who are different than them, just like having a conversation and connecting, I think that's going to not only help them out in the long run, but I think it's going to help them right now with some of the issues that they're struggling with.
I've seen it just and, last week I was going through a drive-through coffee store, and there was just a very awkward exchange of passing the payment method out from the window to into my car, and you think that it would spark a smile or a laugh or something, the way it happened, but what I'm finding is it does not. Like, there was just a blank slate on this girl's face, and I could not get her to have any expression whatsoever. But I'm noticing that more and more. So I don't know what that is, if it's just so much screen time or backlog of COVID or, probably a combination of things. But it is very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I see it. So I'm also doing the youth director at Unity, my church right now. And so we started to have like check-in greeters. We started to have some of our kids be the greeter, the person that checks the person in. And so I'm just, I have to coach them like, okay, say hi,
Yeah.
smile, because it's not natural.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. It's so funny. Anyway, but and it's a different generation too. So a little bit of that, right?
Right. But yeah, again, I think it harkens back to, and there's so many beautiful examples of the ways that older adults can kind of
Mhm.
help younger adults with some of that conversational skills. But there's also programs where the younger adults are coming in and they're teaching older adults some of the new technologies. So I think it's just a matter of fact of like everyone has their gifts, and how are we helping them to share those gifts?
Yeah, and I think I naturally did this, and I was talking about this just or writing about it recently, is when I was a child, I had 10 first cousins. And so we would all get together, but like let's say we were all at the beach for a week and all the kids would go out and play. I always hung inside and wanted to hang out with the adults. And I would just like curl up with a blanket and just listen to their conversations. I wasn't the kid that was going to twirl around all the time, you know, or get dirty or whatever. So that was just part of it too. But I mean, and then as I got older, when I worked, I was gravitated to, the leaders, or, I didn't do the cooler talk and make friends with people my own age. And then, when my grandmother was getting older, I used to pick her up every Sunday and I used to hang out with her. And I'm so glad I had that time. There is a wisdom and there's something about being with people that have had experiences that is comforting.
Yeah, and I think there's also, how do I say, there's like an energy difference,
Mhm.
when you're with somebody who is just more like relaxed and comfortable with themselves, which tends to happen as we get older. Whereas when you're around a lot of young people, you're also around a lot of kind of anxiety and high energy and needing to perform kind of. So I do think there is something like really nourishing about being around older people.
I hadn't really thought about it that way. I think I was just, going with what my body needed at the time.
Mm. Hmm.
Yeah. And I think that we have become so siloed in our societies, even socially,
Hmm.
that I mean, I think it's these conversations and the work that you're trying to do and we're trying to do is really about connecting people. And it's almost like they need the pass, like it's okay to do that, right? Or somehow we forgot.
Yeah,
Looks
yeah,
really
I
out.
think there's a man by the name of Mark Friedman, and he talks about how we're living in the most age diverse kind of time of our lives, but it's also the most age segregated.
Mhm.
And it really goes back to kind of, well, there's a couple of things. I mean, there's our education system, which we start very early on of like, okay, all of this age goes in one classroom, this age goes in another classroom. And then, you get to a college campus where, while it might be changing, it's mostly just young people. And then, you have the workplace, which kind of will mix a little bit, but then you still a lot of the times have these age hierarchies. The older you get, the more you're expected to have the senior position. So again, it's still kind of like, age silos. And then now you have all these senior living places. And I think, I understand the senior living places, but I would love to see them like integrate a little bit more. I
Mhm.
think just in Virginia Beach, as an example, I would love, they tore down that one pier and they were building the senior living place. And I can't remember if they have a restaurant there or not, but I would love for the restaurant to just invite everyone in. And I think the residents there would like that too.
Mhm.
They would like to sit in a restaurant and not feel like I'm only surrounded by old people, but just like I'm surrounded by people.
Because we're all the same at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everyone just wants to feel like, they matter.
But I love this work that you were trying to push forward. And you have two small little boys, right?
Too. Yes. Yeah. And they're great teachers too.
So, how would you like the world to change so they can experience it better?
I think to me, no matter what age you are, I think everyone needs to think about like, what are your skills? What are your assets? Because everyone has them. You might have to undo a little bit of what, culture and people have told you, because if they told you you were, stupid or you can't do anything, they were wrong. So you need to take a fresh look at like, okay, what am I good at? And how can I kind of contribute that in some way? And I think for my kids, that's all I really want for them, is to just know that their job is to discover themselves and to find their place in the world. And that's what I'm trying to do. And that's what I would like to help other people try to do.
I do want to ask you a question that I ask all my guests. In this space and the work that you've done in public health or personally, what does the word healing mean to you?
So I'll start first with health.
Mhm.
And, health by the World Health Organization, they talk about a state of physical, mental, social, and I'll add spiritual well
Mhm.
being. So if that's what health is, it's kind of this, well-rounded well-being, total well-being. I think healing is just the act of returning to your state of well-being.
Mhm.
And I think that you can do that in many ways. And it just starts with an awareness and a desire to want to improve your state of well-being. I think that healing can be accomplished in so many different ways.
I think many times we look to the outside, we look to doctors, we look to other things outside of ourselves to heal. And the more conversations I've have, across all these different ways that people try to heal or approach healing, it's really an inward journey.
Mm-hmm. Agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. But we need help figuring it out too. That's key. I think these resources and these conversations give people, sometimes I think they need the permission, to feel or to listen to themselves, as we go through this journey of life.
Yeah, yeah, and I would love to see that be built out more. I mean, we talked a little
Mhm.
bit yesterday when we were talking about our social prescribing. Ideally, we want these connections, these pathways, so that when somebody is having a medical issue and there are medical things you can do, but also are you helping them to be on that pathway to inward healing as well, and to exploring what healing might look like from them, because it's certainly not just a medicine.
No, no, no. I mean, and then, there's that conversation of, it's one thing to heal, it's another thing to cure. Right?
Mm,
So for a lot of people, there isn't a cure necessarily, but you can heal yourself.
mhm.
And I think that's truly the beauty, because the opposite can happen. You can be cured and then not be healed. So anyway, probably a whole nother podcast episode with that statement. But Katy, I love the work that you're doing in our community, and I can't wait and see what you're doing next.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it too.
All right. Well, thank you again for coming on.
All right. Thanks, Wendy.